The auction room buzzed with anticipation. Old money and new investors mingled in the historic Fairmont Hotel's grand ballroom, all eyeing the prize property listed as Lot 47. The Bennett Estate, a century-old mansion sitting on 12 acres of prime real estate in Manchester Hills. I sat in the back row, baseball cap pulled low, watching my parents hold court near the front. Mom wore her signature pearls, Dad his custom Brooks Brothers suit, the perfect picture of fading aristocracy trying to maintain appearances. The Bennett Estate, starting bid $1 million, the auctioneer announced. A historic property with over 8,000 square feet of living space, original architectural details, and a prestigious lineage dating back to 1912. I could recite every detail of that house from memory. The hidden door in the library that led to a Prohibition-era wine cellar. The notches in the kitchen doorframe marking my height through 18 years of childhood. The loose floorboard in my old room where I'd hidden my early computer parts when Dad insisted technology was just a phase. 1.2 million, called out a developer I recognized. He'd been trying to get his hands on Manchester Hills properties for years, planning to tear down the historic homes for luxury condos. 1.5, countered another voice. My father beamed from his front row seat. After years of financial mismanagement and refusing to adapt the family investment firm to modern times, he was finally admitting defeat by selling our heritage to the highest bidder. Remember Alexander, he'd said when I offered to help 2 years ago, a Bennett man doesn't need handouts from his children. Especially not from a son who abandoned the family business to play with computers. I looked down at my phone, checking the secure banking app I'd developed. My company Phoenix Technologies was now worth $3.2 billion. The house's estimated value of $4.5 million was pocket change compared to our last quarter's earnings. $2 million, called another voice. I thought back to last Christmas, the last time I'd been inside the house. Mom had relegated me to the servants' quarters, claiming the good guest rooms were for family members who still respected tradition. I'd spent the night in my childhood bed, listening to the familiar creaks and groans of the old house, remembering the dreams I'd dreamed there. 2.5 million, the developer raised. My hand tightened around my bidding paddle. Phoenix Holdings, my secret real estate acquisition company, had been carefully structured to hide my ownership. Not even my parents knew about my success. They still thought I was wasting my education on a small tech startup. 3 million, called a new voice. Mom clutched Dad's arm, obviously thrilled at the climbing price. They needed at least 4 million to cover their debts and have enough left to maintain their lifestyle. They'd refused to sell the house years ago when I first warned them about their dwindling finances. Now they had no choice. 3.5, the developer countered. I remembered the day I left for MIT, Dad standing in his wood-paneled study, delivering his ultimatum: either join Bennett Investment Group after graduation or find your own way in the world. I'd chosen my own way. 4 million, called another bidder. Dad's smile faltered slightly. He needed more. The developer looked confident. He could probably go to 5 million, knowing the land alone was worth that much once subdivided. 4.2, someone bid. I thought about the night Mom called 6 months ago, trying to sound casual, as she asked if I had any savings to invest in the family business. When I asked about their finances, she'd hung up. A week later, I discovered they'd listed the house for auction. 4.5 million, the developer said smugly. The room grew quiet. It was a solid bid, probably close to maximum value given the repairs the old house needed. Dad's shoulders slumped slightly. I raised my paddle. 6 million, the room gasped. Mom's pearls rattled as her head whipped around, searching for the mysterious bidder. Dad stood up, trying to see past the crowd. 6 million going once. The developer shook his head, knowing he couldn't justify that price to his investors. 6 million going twice. I stood up, removing my cap. Sold to Phoenix Holdings. Alexander, Mom's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. I walked forward, each step echoing on the ballroom's marble floor. Hello, Mother, Father, surprised to see me. Dad's face reddened. What is this nonsense? You can't afford. Actually, I pulled out my phone, making an instant transfer. I can. The funds have already been wired to the auction house's escrow account. The Bennett estate now belongs to Phoenix Holdings, which belongs to me. Impossible, Dad sputtered. Your little computer company, Phoenix Technologies, is now one of the largest financial technology firms in the country. I handed him my business card. We specialize in secure banking software and cryptocurrency trading platforms. Current market value, $3.2 billion. Mom sank into her chair, pearls clutched tightly. But, you never said, you never asked. I turned to the auctioneer. I'll have my legal team contact you about the paperwork. As I turned to leave, Dad grabbed my arm. Now see here, Alexander. You can't just what, Dad? Save our family home? Prevent you from selling a century of history because you were too proud to admit you needed help? I gently removed his hand. The house stays in the family, but things are going to change. What do you mean change? Mom's voice quavered. For starters, no more pretending the past 20 years haven't happened. No more ignoring reality while our legacy crumbles. I looked around at the watching crowd. Shall we discuss this somewhere more private? 10 minutes later, we sat in a private conference room. Dad paced while Mom dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. The house needs about $2 million in repairs and modernization, I began. I've had contractors evaluate it secretly over the past month. Modernization, Dad exploded. That house is perfect as it is. The wiring is original to 1912. The plumbing needs complete replacement. The roof leaks in 3 places. I laid out photos documenting the decay they'd ignored. It's a miracle it passed basic inspection. But, where will we live? Mom whispered. You can stay, under certain conditions. I opened my laptop, pulling up the contract I'd had prepared. First, the house will be properly restored and updated. Second, you'll accept financial counseling to manage what's left of your assets. Third, you'll stop pretending that success only counts if it comes from doing things your way. Dad's face darkened. How dare you dictate terms to us? We're your parents. Yes, you are, which is why I'm not just evicting you and selling to the developer. I met his glare steadily. I'm offering you a chance to keep your home and your dignity. But things have to change. Your father's right, Mom said stiffly. This is absolutely. Did you know, I interrupted, that Grandfather Bennett installed the first telephone switchboard in Manchester Hills? Everyone said he was crazy. That proper people didn't need telephones in their homes. But he saw the future coming. That made them pause. Grandfather was still their gold standard for business acumen. He also bought one of the first computers for the investment firm in
1976.
I continued. Dad, you told me that story yourself, how he said technology would revolutionize finance. That was different, Dad muttered, but with less conviction. Was it, or did you just forget, that the Bennett legacy isn't about clinging to the past, it's about building the future? Mom's hands stopped fidgeting with her pearls. Your grandfather would say something like that. Because he understood what you forgot. Adaptation isn't surrender, it's survival. I pushed the contract forward. I'm not asking you to give up who you are. I'm asking you to remember who we were meant to be. Dad picked up the contract, scanning the terms. Financial counseling, at our age, from the best firm in the country. And before you object, I was their biggest client when I first started Phoenix. They helped me turn my little computer company into what it is today. And the modernization? Mom asked. You won't ruin the house's character. We'll preserve everything important. But you're getting high-speed internet, modern heating and cooling, and a security system that doesn't rely on window latches from the Taft administration. A ghost of a smile crossed Dad's face. Your grandfather did always say a Bennett should lead, not follow. Exactly. I pulled out a pen. So what do you say? Ready to help me write the next chapter of our family's story? They looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations, long married couples perfect. Finally, Dad picked up the pen. On one condition, he said. Which is, you move back home, while the renovations are happening. If we're going to adapt to the future, you need to help us understand it. I thought about my luxury condo downtown, with its smart home system and panoramic city views. Then I thought about morning coffee in the breakfast nook, where Mom taught me to read, weekly dinners in the formal dining room, where Bennetts had gathered for a century, and late-night discussions in Dad's study. This time as equals. Deal. I held out my hand. Dad shook it firmly, then pulled me into a sudden hug. Your grandfather really would be proud, he whispered. Mom joined the embrace, her pearls cool against my cheek. Just please don't put one of those talking computer things in every room. Actually, I grinned, wait until you see what modern home automation can do. That evening, I stood on the Bennett estate's front porch, watching the sunset paint the old bricks gold. Tomorrow would bring contractors, consultants, and probably more than a few arguments about what necessary updates really meant. But tonight, I had my laptop, a bottle of Dad's favorite scotch, and a chance to rebuild not just a house, but a family. My phone buzzed, another $1 million contract for Phoenix Technologies. Success, I was learning, came in many forms. Sometimes it looked like a soaring stock price. Sometimes it looked like your father asking you to teach him about cryptocurrency over dinner. And sometimes it looked like an old house, waiting to be remembered, restored and renewed. The first month of living back at the Bennett estate proved more challenging than closing any tech deal. I'd set up my temporary office in the conservatory, the only room with enough natural light to counteract the ancient electrical system we hadn't yet replaced. Alexander. Mom's voice echoed through the hallway. These contractors want to remove the original wallpaper in the foyer. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing Phoenix Technologies' latest acquisition. Mom, that wallpaper has water damage and likely mold behind it. But it's from 1912. She stood in the doorway, clutching her pearls, her tell for extreme distress. Your great-grandmother chose it herself, and we've taken detailed photographs and hired specialists to recreate the pattern with modern mold-resistant materials. I showed her the samples on my tablet. See, same design, better quality. She peered at the screen suspiciously. It won't look new, will it? It'll look exactly like it did when great-grandmother first installed it, minus the water stains. This had become our daily dance, negotiating between preservation and progress. Every change required diplomatic skills that made corporate mergers seem simple in comparison. Dad, surprisingly, was adapting better. I'd caught him in his study last night, watching YouTube videos about blockchain technology on the temporary Wi-Fi system we'd installed. Son, he called out now, entering the conservatory with his iPad, a gift I'd given him last week. I've been thinking about what you said regarding digital investment platforms. Oh, I tried to hide my surprise. This was new. Bennett Investment Group has always prided itself on personal service, but he hesitated. Perhaps there's a way to combine tradition with technology. I closed my laptop. This was more important than any corporate email. Actually, I've been working on something you might be interested in. I pulled up Phoenix Technologies' latest project, a wealth management platform that combined AI-driven analytics with personalized human advisory services. See, clients get the benefits of algorithmic trading and data analysis, but also maintain a relationship with a dedicated financial advisor. Best of both worlds. Dad studied the interface, his expression thoughtful. This could work for our older clients. They trust the Bennett name, but their grandchildren want modern solutions. Exactly. We could even. I was interrupted by a crash from upstairs. The chandelier. Mom's voice carried through the house. They're removing the ballroom chandelier. We rushed upstairs to find Mom in a standoff with the renovation team. The massive crystal chandelier that had hung in the ballroom since the house's construction lay carefully packed in protective crating. Mrs. Bennett, the head contractor, explained patiently. We need to reinforce the ceiling before we can safely rehang it. The support beam has rotted. Perhaps this is a good time for lunch, I suggested, steering Mom toward the stairs. The contractors know what they're doing. Over sandwiches in the kitchen, the only room besides my conservatory office that had reliable electricity. Mom finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. How did you do it, Alexander? Build all this without us knowing. I set down my coffee. Remember when you and Dad cut off my trust fund after I turned down the position at Bennett Investment? She flinched slightly but nodded. I had already started developing banking software in college. The trust fund ultimatum just motivated me to work harder. I pulled out my phone, showing her Phoenix Technologies' first homepage. I lived on ramen noodles in a studio apartment, coding 18 hours a day. We thought. She paused. We thought you were just being stubborn. I was, stubborn enough to prove I could succeed my way. I smiled. Just like grandfather, when everyone said automobiles were just a fad and he started offering car loans. Dad joined us, his iPad tucked under his arm. I've been reading about Phoenix Technologies' history. Why didn't you tell us when you went public? Would you have listened? I asked quietly. Or would you have just seen it as more proof I was rejecting our heritage? The silence that followed was heavy with 2 decades of misunderstanding. We were wrong, Dad finally said. Your grandfather, he'd have invested in Phoenix Technologies on day one. He did in a way. I pulled out my wallet and removed a worn piece of paper. Remember the check he gave me for graduation? The one you told me to return because I'd chosen computers over finance. Mom nodded. I didn't return it. It was my seed money, $50,000 that grew into $3 billion. I smoothed the paper carefully. I kept it to remind me that at least one Bennett believed in my vision. Mom's eyes welled up. Oh, Alexander. A commotion from the front of the house interrupted us. Mr. Bennett, we've found something in the walls. In the foyer, the contractors had opened a section of wall, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a dusty leather portfolio. Dad reached in and carefully extracted it. These are your grandfather's original business papers. We gathered around as he opened the portfolio. Inside were documents, letters and photographs, chronicling the Bennett family's rise in Manchester Hills. Look at this. I pointed to a yellowed newspaper clipping. Grandfather's first bank loan was to an automobile dealership. The other banks wouldn't touch it, said cars were too risky. And this, Dad pulled out a faded letter. He was investing in radio companies in the 1920s. Everyone said he was crazy. Because he saw where the future was heading. I finished, just like his father before him, who modernized the family shipping business from sail to steam. Mom touched a photograph of the house being built. The Bennetts have always been innovators, haven't they? We just forgot. It's not too late to remember, I said softly. That evening, after the contractors left, we sat in Dad's study, now equipped with proper lighting and a laptop dock, reviewing the renovation plans. So this home automation system, Dad asked, it can really manage everything from security to climate control, and lighting, entertainment, energy efficiency. I pulled up the specs, all while preserving the house's historic appearance. What about the library? Mom asked. I know we need proper climate control for the books, but we'll hide the vents behind the original woodwork. You won't even notice them. She nodded slowly. And you really think you can work from here? Run your company? Phoenix Technologies has offices worldwide. I can run it from anywhere with good internet. I grinned, which this house will finally have. Speaking of the company, Dad set down his iPad. I've been thinking. Bennett Investment Group needs new leadership. Someone who understands both tradition and innovation. I looked at him sharply. Dad, not as a return to the fold, he clarified. As a partnership, your technology, our client relationships, the Bennett name, moving forward instead of standing still. A merger? I considered the possibilities. It could work. Phoenix's platforms, combined with Bennett's century of experience. And perhaps, Mom added quietly, a father-son legacy that bridges past and future. I looked around the study, where generations of Bennett men had made decisions that shaped our family's destiny. The portrait of my grandfather seemed to smile slightly in the new lighting. On one condition, I said. What's that? Dad asked. We keep the original wallpaper pattern in the foyer. Mom burst out laughing. A real laugh, not her society chuckle. Deal. Later that night, I stood in my childhood bedroom, now serving as my temporary quarters during the renovation. The contractors had carefully removed the loose floorboard where I'd hidden my computer parts, preserving it for reinstallation. My phone buzzed with a message from Phoenix's board, approving the preliminary merger talks with Bennett Investment Group. On my laptop, designs for the restored and modernized Bennett estate waited for final approval. Outside, the garden lights, motion-activated LEDs, disguised as traditional gas lamps, illuminated the century-old oak trees. Somewhere in the walls, new wiring carried power and data through paths first laid when electricity was still a novelty. Change and tradition, I realized, weren't opponents. They were partners in a dance as old as progress itself. The trick was finding the right rhythm. Tomorrow would bring more contractors, more negotiations between preservation and innovation, more careful balance of past and future. But tonight, I could hear Dad down the hall, asking Alexa about cryptocurrency trends, while Mom's voice drifted up from the kitchen, reluctantly admitting that the new lighting made her beloved antique china cabinet look quite stunning actually. Small steps, small changes, but like the first telephone in Manchester Hills, or the first computer at Bennett Investment Group, each step moved us forward while keeping us grounded in who we were. The Bennett legacy wasn't in the walls or the wallpaper, it was in the courage to change while remembering where we came from. 3 months into the renovation, the Bennett estate was a perfect metaphor for our family's transformation, half restored grandeur, half construction zone, all potential. I sat in the newly completed East Wing boardroom, once the formal dining room, preparing for a video conference that would unite old and new. On one screen, Phoenix Technologies board members waited virtually. On another, Bennett Investment Group's partners gathered in their downtown office. "Gentlemen," I began. "Today we're discussing more than a merger, we're talking about bridging generations." Dad stood beside me, looking strange yet right in his new custom suit, which Mom insisted matched the restored wood paneling. "Bennett Investment Group has served our clients for over a century, but as my son has shown me, longevity without innovation is just slow decay." The presentation we'd prepared showcased the synthesis, Bennett's historic client relationships and traditional financial expertise merged with Phoenix's cutting-edge technology and digital platforms. Imagine personal wealth management powered by AI but guided by human wisdom, I explained. Digital efficiency with handshake reliability. "And the Bennett name?" one of the older partners asked. 100 years of reputation becomes the foundation for the next 100 years. Dad finished. "Alexander has proven that progress doesn't mean abandoning our principles. Sometimes it means returning to them." The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, both boards had agreed to move forward with due diligence. As the screens went dark, Dad turned to me. "Your grandfather made his biggest deals in this room," he said quietly. "Over dinner, actually. Said you could tell a man's character by how he handled his napkin. And now his great-grandson closes deals over video calls." I smiled. Different method, same purpose. Speaking of different methods, Mom's voice carried from the hallway. "These smart lights of yours just turned on by themselves in the conservatory. That's because they detected motion, dear." Dad explained proudly, clearly pleased to show off his new technical knowledge. "It's more efficient." I hid my smile. 3 months ago, he would have been the one complaining about automated anything. The house's transformation had become a daily source of small victories and surprising adaptations. The original grand staircase now concealed a state-of-the-art security system. The library's antique tables featured hidden wireless charging stations. Even the gardens were evolving, with automated irrigation controlled by moisture sensors disguised as decorative stakes. "Mr. Alexander." Maria, our housekeeper of 20 years, appeared at the door. "The art conservators are here about the murals in the ballroom." The ballroom had become our biggest preservation challenge. The ceiling murals, painted in 1912, needed restoration but also had to accommodate modern climate control and LED lighting. "Technology serving tradition," I'd explained to Mom when she worried about hiding vents behind the artwork. Like using digital tools to restore Renaissance paintings. Now watching the conservators scan the murals with handheld devices that would help recreate damaged sections, I saw Mom nodding appreciatively. "They're not changing it," she realized. "They're saving it." "That's what I've been trying to tell you," I said gently. "About everything." Later that afternoon, I found Dad in his study, surrounded by both paper files and tablet screens. He was reviewing client portfolios, marking which ones would benefit most from Phoenix's digital platforms. "The Thompson account," he mused. "Third-generation client. Very traditional. But their grandchildren keep asking about cryptocurrency. Perfect candidate for our hybrid approach," I agreed. Personal advisor plus digital tools. Speaking of which, I pulled up the latest designs for Bennett Phoenix Financial's new interface. The platform combined Phoenix's advanced trading algorithms with the classic Bennett investment philosophy. See, clients can access all the digital features, but their dedicated Bennett advisor is always one click away. We're not replacing relationships with technology, we're enhancing them. Dad studied the interface. Your grandfather used to say that banking was about trust first, money second. This keeps that truth while building something new. A crash from upstairs interrupted us. The chandelier, Mom's voice carried down. They're trying to install that new lighting system. We rushed to the ballroom, where technicians were carefully integrating LED elements into the restored crystal chandelier. Mrs. Bennett, the lead technician, explained, "We're not replacing anything. We're adding modern lights that will actually protect the original crystals by reducing heat." Mom watched suspiciously as they demonstrated the system. The chandelier lit up, its historic elegance enhanced by perfectly calibrated modern illumination. "Oh," she said softly. "It looks better. Like everything else we're doing," I reminded her. Old and new working together. That evening, we had our first family dinner in the partially restored dining room. The antique table now sat beneath subtle recessed lighting, while hidden speakers played classical music from a smartphone app Mom was finally learning to enjoy. "The merger announcement goes public next week," Dad said, passing the bread basket. "Bennett Phoenix Financial has a nice ring to it. What would your grandfather say?" Mom wondered. I pulled out my tablet, opening a scan of the documents we'd found in the wall. Actually, he wrote something relevant here. October 1947. "Banking isn't about clinging to the past or chasing the future. It's about building bridges between them." Wise man, Dad nodded. "Took us a while to remember that." Speaking of remembering, Mom added, "I've been thinking about the foundation." The Bennett Foundation had been her pride and joy, funding local arts and education through traditional fundraising galas. "What about it?" I asked carefully. "Well, if we're modernizing everything else," she paused, "perhaps we could use some of your technology to reach more people, make giving more accessible." I nearly dropped my fork. "Are you suggesting a digital platform for charitable giving?" "If you can make banking both modern and personal," she said primly. "Surely we can do the same for philanthropy." Dad and I exchanged glances, Mom voluntarily suggesting a tech solution. The world really was changing. After dinner, I walked through the house, taking in the progress. The foyer's recreated wallpaper glowed softly under modern lighting that matched the original gas lamps. New wiring and plumbing ran hidden behind restored wooden panels. Security cameras disguised as period fixtures kept watch over priceless antiques. In my grandfather's old study, now my office, his portrait hung beside a wall of digital displays. The contrast should have seemed jarring, but somehow it worked. Like the house itself, like our family, it was finding harmony between eras. My phone buzzed with another message from the merger team. The press release was ready, announcing the creation of Bennett Phoenix Financial. The headline read, "Historic family firm embraces digital future while honoring traditional values." I thought about the boy who'd hidden computer parts under his floorboards, dreaming of a future his family couldn't see. Now that boy was building that future while preserving the past that had shaped him. The house creaked softly, settling into its new systems while keeping its old soul. Somewhere upstairs, Mom was probably still marveling at the chandelier. Down the hall, Dad's voice drifted from his study, dictating investment notes to his tablet. Change, I realized, wasn't about erasing history. It was about building on it, learning from it, growing through it. The Bennett legacy hadn't needed saving, it had needed remembering. Our strength was never in resisting change, but in leading it. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, merger details, renovation decisions, the constant balance of progress and preservation. But tonight, in this house where past and future had finally made peace, everything felt possible. After all, we were Bennetts. Innovation was in our blood, even if we'd forgotten it for a while. The day of the Bennett Phoenix Financial launch coincided with the estate's grand reopening. 6 months of renovation had transformed both our family home and our family legacy. Morning sunlight streamed through restored stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the foyer's perfectly recreated wallpaper. The house hummed quietly with hidden technology, climate control maintaining perfect temperature for the antiques, smart security systems disguised as period fixtures, wireless networks carried through the same paths where the first telephone lines once ran. The press is arriving, Mom announced, adjusting her pearls, no longer a nervous habit, but an accessory worn with renewed confidence. She carried her tablet easily now, checking the guest list with practiced swipes. The streaming setup is ready in the ballroom, Dad added, looking natural in his tech-enhanced study. Multiple screens displayed market data behind his restored antique desk. All our global offices will be watching live. I stood in the entrance hall, where generations of Bennetts had greeted guests. Today, those guests would include tech journalists, financial reporters, and society columnists, all here to witness the merger of old money and new innovation. The first arrivals exclaimed over the seamless blend of historic and modern. The chandelier's crystal sparkled under its innovative lighting. Hidden speakers played classical music through an AI-curated playlist. Even the gardens showed the synthesis, with traditional roses blooming alongside sustainable native plants, all maintained by smart irrigation systems. Mr. Bennett, a reporter approached, how does it feel to merge a century-old institution with modern tech? Before I could answer, Dad stepped forward. It feels like coming home to who we always were. The Bennetts have always been innovators. We just needed my son to remind us of that. The formal announcement took place in the ballroom, where the restored murals now concealed state-of-the-art presentation systems. I stood at the podium, family portraits watching from the walls as cameras streamed the event worldwide. Bennett Phoenix Financial isn't just a merger of companies, I began. It's a bridge between generations. We're not choosing between tradition and innovation. We're proving they're strongest when united. The presentation showcased our new platforms, AI-driven investment tools with personal advisors, digital banking with human touch, automated systems that enhanced rather than replaced relationships. Like this house, I gestured around the ballroom. Our company preserves what matters while embracing what's possible. Every modern feature serves a historic purpose. Every tradition finds new life through innovation. Mom surprised everyone by taking the stage next. The Bennett Foundation is also entering a new era, she announced, perfectly navigating the digital presentation. Our new giving platform democratizes philanthropy while maintaining personal connection with causes. I watched Dad beam with pride as she demonstrated the foundation's app. The woman who once refused to use email was now championing digital transformation. After the formal presentations, guests toured the estate. Tech reporters marveled at hidden innovations, while preservation societies praised our careful restoration. In the library, traditional bankers explored digital trading platforms at terminals, disguised as antique writing desks. Your grandfather would be proud, Maria said quietly, finding me alone in his old study. Not just of the house or the company, of how you brought your family into the future without losing its soul. Looking around at the carefully balanced blend of old and new, I had to agree. The study's original wood paneling now concealed the most advanced trading systems in the industry. Grandfather's portrait watched over screens displaying global market data. Everything changed, everything preserved. The day ended with a family dinner in the restored dining room. Through the windows, the garden's traditional gas lamps, now lead-powered, illuminated paths where I once played as a child. To the Bennett legacy, Dad raised his glass. Past, present, and future. To remembering who we are, Mom added, by seeing who we can become. I looked at my parents, Dad comfortable with his tablet, Mom checking the foundation's social media, and marveled at how far we'd come. The gulf between generations had been bridged not by surrender, but by understanding. Later that night, after the guests left and the cameras stopped rolling, I stood in my childhood bedroom. The loose floorboard had been carefully preserved, though now it hid backup drives instead of computer parts. Through the window, I could see the city lights where both Bennett Investments' historic office and Phoenix Technologies' modern headquarters stood. Tomorrow they would merge operations, combining centuries of financial wisdom with cutting-edge innovation. The press would analyze every detail, markets would react, competitors would respond. But tonight in this house where past and future had made peace, none of that seemed important. What mattered was the sound of Dad explaining blockchain to his old banking friends in his study, Mom planning digital outreach for her charity galas, and the quiet harmony of tradition and progress working together. My phone buzzed with congratulations from around the world, but the message that meant most was the simplest. A photo from the contractor who'd found the documents in the wall, showing one last discovery, my grandfather's handwritten note from 1960. The future always comes. The choice isn't whether to face it, but how to greet it, with fear that diminishes us, or with courage that defines us. The Bennett legacy was never about resisting change. It was about leading it, shaping it, making it serve the values that mattered most. Sometimes it took losing your way to remember where you were meant to go. I saved the photo and turned off my phone. Outside, the estate's lights dimmed automatically, modern technology serving historic beauty. Inside, old walls harbored new networks, carrying the future through paths built by the past. Everything changes, everything endures. The trick is knowing which is which. End of story.